Hi folks, okay, so what we're going to talk about today is health food claims, and I'm going to talk a little bit about where we've been and where we're going. So what we've been up to at this point is talking about macromolecules. And the reason we wanted to talk about macromolecules is to give us a little bit more depth and detail into what's going on with the human organisms and the connections and the synthesis of what's going on between organisms. Okay, what's the commonalities, what are the patterns? And so first we have to talk about macromolecules, because the significance of macromolecules is that they're going to become, the monomers that make them up are repeated over and over again in nature. So one example, so because I know my biology, that means that I can interpret things like health food claims. I can go to the grocery store and make really informed decisions. So this weekend I was over at Walmart picking up school supplies. When I was there, I happened to notice, which I often do, is to look at food labels. And it's becoming very common in places like Vons or Ralph's or Sprouts or wherever you might go shopping, to find products such as these. So I took a photograph, and here we have, we should have here a photograph. Has anybody seen a product such as Monkfruit in the raw? So what they're saying that it is a 0-calorie sweetener. And a lot of people might, are you familiar with, has anybody ever heard of low carb? A lot of people have heard about low carb diets. Have you ever heard them referred to as paleo diets or keto diets? The idea here is that people are trying to get their metabolism to burn alternative fuels, because you can burn more than one type of fuel, and they're trying to lower the carbohydrate load in their bodies. So whether or not that's a good way of going, at least going lower, I go lower carb personally. I think that it makes me feel a lot better. But that said, what about this product? All right, so this is supposed to be, they're claiming to be a 0-calorie sweetener. So I took a picture. As you all know, I always look at the other side of the label. So let's look at that. All right, so if you go to my website, you'll be able to see a picture of the ingredients. And as I've told you guys before in the past, maltodextrin, the first ingredient is always the bulk ingredient. So by FDA standards, by law, they have to list the most abundant ingredient first, and then the second ingredient, so the first ingredient is maltodextrin and the second ingredient is monkfruit extract. So let's figure out what those are. So what is maltodextrin? Well, let's open up Wikipedia and do a little search. So maltodextrin, right away, Miss Smitham recognizes the word dextrin, because dextrin, I just happen to know from all the years of working in a laboratory that dextrin is glucose. So actually, if you guys recall, this is glucose. Don't worry about knowing all this stuff. The one thing you do want to know is that these are monosaccharides, and if you remember it visually like Miss Smitham does, then you'll recall that what we've modeled, looking like a pearl in a chain, a necklace, an individual pearl in a necklace would be like a monomer is to a polysaccharide. And when we've used our manipulatives, you guys recall that we've used scissors to represent what? Yes, enzymes. And so they cut between the strings in the pearl. There's a string holding the pearls together, just like, so you've got your polysaccharide chain, like a pearl necklace, and then the individual pearls are like the glucose monomers. And they're being held together by bonds, and the scissors that we used in our manipulatives earlier this week represent what? Right, enzymes. And those enzymes are, what kind of macromolecule is an enzyme? Yes, it is a protein. What are some other things that proteins can do? Proteins basically, yes, they do everything. They are the powerhouses of the cell. They can do, right? They can do, I'm hearing a lot of things coming. Structural support, they serve as neurotransmitters, cell signaling, they do cell signaling, so messages between cells. What else? They basically build everything in the cell. So basically what we're looking at here is maltodextrin is actually a polysaccharide, and it's used as a food additive. It's basically starch, and it's basically produced in mass production throughout the world. In the United States, it's usually potato or corn, and it's basically taking these very large, imagine these pearl necklaces, but many, many strands. They actually have branches that branch off from the main strand, so these big macromolecules of monosaccharides, so they're big, big polysaccharides, and they chemically process it. I think they just use acid and they, instead of enzymes to cleave it into smaller into the maltodextrin. So they're just like they're just maybe 17 monomers long. So those monomers, the reason when they go into your digestive tract, they have a very, very high, have you guys ever heard of a glycemic index? When the sugar goes up in your bloodstream very quickly, it spikes. That's a high glycemic index. And maltodextrin has almost the same glycemic index as sugar, table sugar. So basically what they're claiming is that the maltodextrin, they're saying, is a zero calorie sweetener. So let's take another look at the food label. And another thing about it, besides the fact that it's basically table sugar, is that they're saying that the amount of carbohydrate being the polypeptide chain, is less than 0.5 grams. Well, very interesting, because the serving size of 1 teaspoon, we know how small a teaspoon is, right? It's about 0.5 grams. Okay, so if it's about 0.5 grams, that's the whole entire product is 0.5 grams, and there are just under 0.5 grams of carbohydrates. Well, that's interesting, because they can say that if it was 0.49999 grams, in other words, it's just a fraction of a hair underneath 0.5, then they're making it sound like there's no calories in it, that there's no carbohydrates. So they're saying that it's 0%, which is very misleading, because obviously all they had to do is add monk fruit extract. They could put in 0.0000001% monk fruit extract and end up having, basically they're selling you maltodextrin, which is a very inexpensive, commercially available product. They're selling this guy for something like over $7, and it's something like 4.8 ounces. So what you're paying is over $1 per ounce for something that is basically a commercially available. Just buy sugar. You can buy a pound of sugar for what, $2, right? So I think one of the worst things about something like this health food claim is the fact that you think that you're paying money, you're paying a lot of money actually, imagining that you are getting something, a product that is healthy, and that you're on a low carb diet, and if you're not able to achieve your dieting goals, then this week all of a sudden you've wasted your money and you're not able to achieve your goals. So the benefits of learning biology are that we know from reading, we can easily look up the meaning of maltodextrin online, and now because you know about the subunits, the monomers of glucose, like the pearls on the chain, you know a polysaccharide, you know that is like a pearl necklace, and you know the enzymes that cleave it into the smaller monosaccharide, maybe 17 chains long, that comes from big macro molecules like potato starch or corn are commercially cleaved down into something like a pearl necklace about 17 monomers long, which is a lot easier to digest into and has a high glycemic index like sugar. So basically, because we know that, because it's so easy to digest straight into sugar, because it's just easy to cleave those 17, it's just real easy to cleave compared to hundreds of glycosidic bonds. You don't need to know all the details. All you need to know is the monomers are sugar. So you've got the biological subunits. You know what a macromolecule is, a polymer. You know enzymes that are proteins, and that those are like the molecular scissors. So bio, you have a lot of skills, and we're going to go back over this in more detail later. So thanks for listening, and let's get on with the rest of the lesson.